She thought she knew the man she married. 12 years of quiet mornings and careful routines. Then she found the letter he never sent. Some truths don't break you. They just show you who you've always been. Have you ever built something beautiful on a foundation you never questioned? The house is too quiet. Maren stands in the hallway, listening to the silence press against her ears. It's the kind of quiet that feels unnatural. No hum of the refrigerator, no creak of Callum moving upstairs, no distant murmur of traffic from Ashwood's sleepy streets. Just stillness, the kind that makes you aware of your own breathing. She's alone. Callum left early this morning, a work trip, he said, or maybe visiting his brother upstate. She can't quite remember. He'd kissed her forehead before dawn, his lips cool and careful, and she'd mumbled something half asleep. By the time she woke, he was gone. Now it's late afternoon, and the October light slants through the living room windows in soft, muted gold. Dust motes drift through the air, slow and weightless, suspended in the amber glow. The light feels tired somehow, like it's already giving up before evening arrives. It catches on the edges of furniture. The worn corner of the couch, the brass lamp, the oak desk in the corner of the room. Myron hasn't touched that desk in years. It's Callum's. Always has been. A boundary she learned not to cross without thinking about it, the way you learn to step around a loose floorboard or avoid a drawer that sticks. He keeps his work there. Papers, receipts, the small administrative debris of a life lived carefully. She's never asked what's inside. He's never offered. But today, she needs something. A tax document from 3 years ago, maybe 4. Or an old photo of her mother she thought she'd tucked into a folder somewhere. The excuse feels thin even to her, but it's enough to pull her across the room. She stops in front of the desk. The wood is dark, polished smooth from years of use. She can see the grain beneath the surface, whorls and lines like fingerprints. There's a small lamp on top, a stack of unopened mail, a coffee mug with a ring of dried residue at the bottom. Everything arranged just so. Everything in its place. Her hand hovers over the drawer handle. It's cold when she finally touches it. Smooth metal, slightly tarnished. She hesitates. There's no reason to hesitate, she tells herself. It's just a drawer. Just papers. But something in her chest tightens anyway. A small knot of unease she doesn't have a name for. She pulls. The drawer opens with a low, reluctant creak. Wood against wood, the sound of something that hasn't moved in a long time. Inside, the contents are neat, orderly. Stacks of paper clipped together. Receipts arranged by date. A small wooden box, smooth and dark, pushed toward the back. Marin's fingers move through the papers carefully, as if she's an intruder in her own home. Tax forms. Bank statements. Nothing interesting. Nothing secret. And then, beneath it all, folded and pressed flat, a letter. It's old. She can tell by the way the paper has yellowed at the edges, softened from being folded and unfolded too many times. It's not in an envelope, just a single sheet, creased down the middle, tucked beneath, tucked with everything else like it was meant to stay hidden. Her hand trembles as she lifts it. The paper is heavier than she expected, thicker, the kind you'd use for something important. She unfolds it slowly, the crease crackling faintly under her fingers. The handwriting is Callum's. She recognizes it immediately. Neat, careful. The letters slanting slightly to the right, but younger, shakier, like it was written by someone who wasn't sure yet. She starts to read. The first line is simple, quiet, but it stops her heart. I don't know who I'll be in 10 years. I hope I'm brave enough to tell the truth. Marin's breath catches. The letter trembles in her hands. She stares at the words, reading them again, trying to make sense of them. Her pulse is loud in her ears now, a steady thud that drowns out the silence of the house. She doesn't move. She doesn't blink. She just holds the letter, her fingers white against the yellowed paper, and feels something inside her begin to crack. Maren doesn't move. She sits on the floor beside the desk, the letter in her lap, her back against the wall. The house is still quiet, but now the silence feels different. Heavier, like it's holding something back. She stares at the words on the page, reading them again and again, trying to pull meaning from the space between the letters. I don't know who I'll be in 10 years. I hope I'm brave enough to tell the truth. What truth? Her mind reaches backward, searching, trying to find the crack in the foundation she missed. When did it start? When did the distance begin? 3 months ago. A Tuesday morning in July. The kitchen was bright with early summer light, warm and golden, spilling across the breakfast table. Maren sat with her coffee, scrolling through the news on her phone. Callum stood at the counter pouring his own cup. Black, no sugar, the way he always took it. The coffee maker hummed softly, a low familiar drone. He moved with precision, measured, every gesture deliberate, like he was following a script he'd memorized years ago. Pour, stir. Set the spoon down quietly. She glanced up at him. You okay? He didn't look at her, just nodded, his eyes on the mug in his hands. Fine. The word hung in the air for a moment, flat and unremarkable. She'd accepted it. She always accepted it. Because what else was there to say? He said, fine, and fine was enough. She went back to her phone. He sat across from her at the table, and they drank their coffee in parallel, close but not together. The space between them felt ordinary, comfortable even, the kind of silence that comes after years of knowing someone. Except now, sitting on the floor with a letter in her lap, Maren wonders if it was silence or just the absence of words. Another memory surfaces, sharper this time. Late at night, maybe 2 months ago. She'd woken to use the bathroom and noticed the light on downstairs. She'd walked to the top of the stairs and looked down. The door to the living room was half closed, but she could see the glow from the lamp on the desk. Hear the faint rustle of paper. Callum. Working. She'd stood there for a moment, her hand on the banister, debating whether to go down, to ask if he needed anything, to sit with him, but she didn't. She went back to bed, told herself it was work, emails, spreadsheets, the small, tedious tasks that filled his evenings. She never asked what he was doing. It felt intrusive somehow, like crossing a line she wasn't supposed to cross. Now she realizes he never invited her to cross it. Maren shifts on the floor, her legs starting to ache. The letter is still in her lap, the paper soft and worn under her fingertips. She looks around the room. At the desk, the lamp, the neatly stacked mail. Everything in its place. Everything careful. She twists the wedding band on her finger without thinking. It's a habit now, something she does when she's nervous or thinking too hard. The metal is smooth, warm from her skin. She's worn it for 12 years. 12 years of mornings like that one in July. 12 years of parallel silences. When did they stop looking at each other? She tries to remember the last time Callum held her gaze for more than a few seconds. The last time they had a conversation that wasn't about groceries or bills or whose turn it was to take out the trash. The last time he said something true. She can't. The realization sits heavy in her chest, cold and foreign, like swallowing ice. She thinks about their wedding day, 12 years ago, late spring, the air soft and full of promise. Callum had stood at the altar in his careful way, his vows written on a small card that he'd tucked into his jacket pocket. He'd read them in that same measured voice, steady, sincere, each word chosen with care. I promise to be your partner, to build a life with you, to choose you every day. She'd believed him. She still believes him in a way. He did choose her. Every morning, every evening, every quiet moment in between. He poured her coffee. He kissed her forehead. He stayed. But now, holding this letter, she wonders, who was choosing her? The man she thought she knew, or someone pretending to be him? The autumn light has shifted. It's lower now, softer, slanting through the window at a steeper angle. The warmth is almost gone, replaced by something cooler, grayer. The kind of light that makes you realize the day is ending whether you're ready or not. Maren looks down at the letter again. The first line still stares back at her, quiet and devastating. I don't know who I'll be in 10 years. I hope I'm brave enough to tell the truth. She unfolds it fully now, her hands trembling only, slightly. The crease in the middle is sharp, worn from being folded and unfolded too many times. How long has this been here? How many times did Callum open this drawer, see this letter, and close it again without saying anything? How many times did he choose silence? She takes a breath, steadies herself, and begins to read. The handwriting is different. Maren notices it first, before the words, before the meaning. The letters are smaller than Callum's usual script, less controlled. They slant unevenly across the page, some pressing harder into the paper than others, as if written by someone who hadn't yet learned to hide. She leans forward, her knees folding beneath her. The floor is hard against her shins, but she doesn't notice. She's pulled in now, the letter filling her entire field of vision. I don't know who I'll be in 10 years. I hope I'm brave enough to tell the truth. Her eyes move to the next line. I'm 26. That feels young to some people, old to others. To me, it just feels uncertain, like I'm standing at a crossroads and every direction looks the same. She reads faster now, her breath shallow. I've spent most of my life trying to be what people expected. The good son, the reliable friend, the one who doesn't make waves. And it worked, I think. People like me, they trust me. But sometimes I wonder if they're trusting someone who doesn't actually exist. Maren's hands tighten on the paper. The edges crinkle slightly under her fingers. There's a part of me I've been burying, not because it's bad, but because it's complicated, because it doesn't fit into the life everyone expects me to live. I call that part Ellery. The name stops her. Ellery. She says it aloud, testing the sound. It's soft, ambiguous, neither clearly masculine nor feminine. She doesn't recognize it. Callum has never mentioned anyone named Ellery, not once in 12 years. She keeps reading. Ellery isn't a person, not really. It's a version of myself I've been afraid to be. The part that asks questions no one wants to answer. The part that wants something different than what's safe. Maren's chest tightens. The clock on the wall ticks steadily, each second loud in the quiet house. She can hear her own breathing now, uneven and thin. I thought, if I buried Ellery deep enough, I'd forget. I'd become the person I'm supposed to be, and eventually it wouldn't feel like pretending anymore. But it does. It still does. Her hands are shaking. The paper trembles between her fingers, the words blurring slightly. She blinks, forces herself to focus. I'm afraid of disappointing people, my parents, my friends, the person I'll marry one day if I ever do. I'm afraid they'll see Ellery and realize I've been lying the whole time, not on purpose, but by omission, by silence. Maren feels something cold spreading through her chest, a slow, creeping realization she doesn't want to name yet. She was that person, the person he married, the person he was afraid of, disappointing. I want to believe I'll be braver in 10 years, that I'll have the courage to live honestly, even if it's hard, even if it costs me something. The letter continues, but the handwriting grows shakier, more hurried. But right now, I'm choosing safety. I'm choosing the life that looks right, even if it feels hollow. Because maybe if I choose it long enough, it'll become real. Maybe I'll stop pretending and start believing. Marion reads the last line, and her breath catches. Maybe love is something you can build, even if it doesn't start with truth. The letter ends there, mid-thought, as if he couldn't finish, as if he didn't want to. She sits back, the paper still in her hands. The autumn light has faded further now, the room dim and gray. The warmth is gone entirely, replaced by the cool stillness of evening approaching. She looks down at her wedding band, twists it slowly, feeling the metal slide against her skin. 12 years. 12 years of mornings and evenings and quiet routines. 12 years of believing she knew him. But she didn't. She knew the person he chose to be. The careful, measured man who poured coffee and kissed her forehead and never quite met her eyes. The man who worked late at night with the door half closed. The man who answered fine when she asked if he was okay. But Ellery, whoever or whatever Ellery was, she never knew that part at all. She stands, her legs stiff and aching. The letter is still in her hand, the paper soft and worn. She looks at the desk, this space that was always his, always closed off to her. And now she understands why. It wasn't just a workspace, it was a repository, a place to keep the parts of himself he couldn't show her, the parts he buried so deep he thought they'd disappear. Her hands move without thinking. She opens the drawer again, pulls out the stack of papers, the receipts, the small wooden box. She's looking for something. Another letter, another clue, another piece of the person Callum used to be. And then she sees it. Tucked beneath the wooden box, pressed flat against the bottom of the drawer, another envelope, thicker this time, sealed. Her name is written on the front in Callum's handwriting, not the young, shaky script from the letter she just read. This is his current hand. Steady, precise, deliberate. Marion. Her pulse quickens. The envelope is heavy in her hands, the seal unbroken. Whatever is inside, he never meant for her to see it. Not yet. Maybe not ever. She holds it for a long moment, staring at her name on the front. The room is almost dark now, the last of the autumn light slipping away. The clock ticks. Her breath steadies, and she tears the envelope open. The envelope is heavier than it should be. Marion holds it in both hands, her thumbs pressed against the seal. Her name stares back at her. Marion, written in Callum's current handwriting. Steady, precise. The kind of script that doesn't tremble or second-guess itself. But her hands do. She slides her finger under the flap and tears. The sound is sharp in the silence. Paper ripping. Something breaking open that was meant to stay closed, inside a single folded sheet. Thicker than the first letter. Heavier. She unfolds it slowly. The date is at the top. 12 years ago. Late spring. Their wedding day. Her breath stops. Marion, I hope you never read this. I hope by the time we're old I'll have fallen in love with you for real. The words hit her like cold water. She reads them again, slower this time, as if reading slower will change their meaning. I hope you never read this. I'll have fallen in love with you for real. Her chest tightens, the cold spreads, sharp and creeping, like frost working its way through glass. She keeps reading. I'm writing this on the morning of our wedding. You're upstairs getting ready, and I'm sitting at this desk, trying to make sense of what I'm about to do. I should be happy. I should be certain, but all I feel is fear. Her hands shake. The paper rustles faintly, the only sound in the room, besides the ticking clock. I'm marrying you because you're kind, because you're steady, because when I'm with you, I feel like I can be the person everyone expects me to be. That's not a bad reason, is it? People marry for worse. Marin's throat tightens. She swallows hard, forces herself to keep going. But I don't know if I'm in love with you. Not the way I'm supposed to be. Not the way people talk about in vows and songs and poems. I care about you. I respect you. I want to build a life with you. But love, I don't know if I feel it yet. Yet the clock ticks. Once, twice, 3 times. I'm terrified of being alone. I think that's the truth I've been avoiding. I'm terrified of living a life where no one chooses me, where I'm always the careful one, the reliable one, the one people like but don't love. So I'm choosing you. I'm choosing safety. I'm choosing the life that looks right. Her hands are white-knuckled now, gripping the paper so hard it crinkles at the edges. And I'm hoping, God, I'm hoping, that love is something you can build. That if I show up every day, if I'm kind and present and committed, maybe one day I'll wake up and it'll be real. Maybe the pretending will stop feeling like pretending. She reads the next line, and something inside her fractures. Maybe you'll never know the difference. Marin stops breathing. She stares at the words, reading them over and over, as if repetition will dull the sting. But it doesn't. It only sharpens. Maybe you'll never know the difference. 12 years. 12 years of mornings and evenings and quiet routines. 12 years of believing she was loved. 12 years of tenderness she thought was real. And he was hoping she wouldn't notice. She forces herself to finish. I want to believe this will work. I want to believe that commitment can become love. That choosing you over and over will eventually feel like something more than just choosing not to be alone. But if you're reading this, it means I failed. It means I couldn't make it real. It means I stayed silent too long, and you found the truth I was too afraid to tell you. I'm sorry, Marin. I'm so sorry. You deserved better than this. You deserved someone who chose you because they couldn't imagine life without you. Not because they were afraid of a life alone. If you're reading this, I failed. And I'm sorry. The letter ends there. Marin sits perfectly still. The room is dark now. The autumn light is gone entirely, replaced by the gray stillness of evening. The clock ticks. The house is silent. Her breath is shallow and uneven. She looks down at the letter in her lap. At the words written 12 years ago, on the morning she stood in a white dress and believed she was marrying someone who loved her. She thinks about that day, the vows Callum read from the card in his pocket. I promise to be your partner, to build a life with you, to choose you every day. He did choose her, every day, every morning, every evening, every quiet moment in between, but not because he loved her, because he was afraid. Her hand moves to her wedding band. She twists it slowly, the way she always does when she's thinking too hard. The metal is warm from her skin, familiar. She's worn it every day for 12 years, but now it feels different, heavier, like it's made of something other than gold. She slides it off. The motion is slow, deliberate. The band catches slightly at her knuckle, then slips free. She holds it in her palm for a moment, staring at it. A perfect circle, unbroken. A promise that was never what she thought it was. She sets it on the desk, gently. Not angry, just done. It sits there beside the letters, small and quiet, catching the faint light from the window. Marin doesn't cry. She thought she would. But the tears don't come. Just a hollow ache in her chest, cold and spreading, like something vital has been removed and nothing has rushed in to fill the space. She thinks about Callum, the man who poured her coffee and kissed her forehead and worked late at night with the door half closed. The man who answered fine when she asked if he was okay. The man who chose her not because he loved her, but because he was terrified of being alone. And she wonders, did she do the same thing? Did she marry him because she loved him? Or because he was kind and steady and safe? Because saying yes felt easier than being alone? The thought sits heavy in her chest, uncomfortable and true. She stands. Her legs are stiff, her body aching from sitting too long. She walks to the window and looks out at Ashwood's quiet streets. The streetlights are starting to flicker on, casting soft pools of yellow on the pavement. The trees are bare now, their branches stark against the dimming sky. The autumn is ending. Winter is coming. She presses her palm against the glass. It's cold, smooth, solid, real, and she realizes she has to decide. What is real? What is enough? Is 12 years of tenderness worth anything if it started with fear? Can love grow from safety? Or was their entire marriage built on a foundation that was always meant to crack? She doesn't know, but she knows she can't pretend anymore. The light is dying. Maren stands at the window, her palm pressed against the cold glass, watching the last traces of autumn fade into evening. The sky is bruised now, deep purple streaked with gray, the kind of color that signals an ending. The streetlights flicker on one by one, casting soft pools of yellow across Ashwood's empty streets. Behind her, the desk sits in shadow. The letters are still there, scattered across the surface. And the wedding band, small and gold, resting beside them like evidence. Emini, she can see her reflection in the window, faint, translucent, hovering between the room and the world outside. She looks tired, hollow, like someone who's been carrying something heavy for so long they forgot it was there until they finally set it down. She thinks about her wedding day, late spring, 12 years ago. The air was soft and full of promise. She stood in a white dress, her hands trembling as she held the bouquet. Callum had been waiting at the altar, steady and calm, his vows written carefully on a small card. I promise to be your partner, to build a life with you, to choose you every day. She'd felt relief when he said those words. Not joy, exactly. Not the wild, breathless kind of love people write songs about. Just relief. Relief that someone had chosen her, that she wouldn't have to navigate life alone, that she could build something stable, something safe. Was that love? She doesn't know anymore. She remembers the moment he proposed. They'd been dating for 8 months. He'd taken her to a quiet restaurant, ordered wine, and asked her with the same careful deliberation he brought to everything. It wasn't romantic, not in the cinematic sense, but it felt right, comfortable, easy. And she'd said yes without hesitation, not because she couldn't imagine life without him, but because she couldn't imagine life alone. The realization sits heavy in her chest, cold and undeniable. She turns away from the window and looks at the desk, at the letters, at the wedding band catching the faint light. She thinks about Ellery, the name Callum used for the part of himself he buried, the self he was afraid to be, the self he locked away in this desk, hoping it would disappear if he ignored it long enough. And she wonders, did she do the same thing? Did she bury parts of herself to be acceptable? To be the kind of person someone would choose? Did she smooth her edges, quiet her questions, fold herself into something smaller and easier to love? She thinks she did. She thinks maybe everyone does. The ache in her chest spreads. Not sharp, but deep. The kind of pain that doesn't announce itself, just settles in and stays. She walks back to the desk, her legs heavy. She picks up. The wedding band, holds it in her palm. It's so small, so light. 12 years of mornings and evenings and quiet routines, reduced to a circle of gold. She sets it down again. gently. And she speaks aloud, her voice quiet in the empty house. I think I did the same thing. The words hang in the air, fragile and true. She sits on the edge of the couch, staring at nothing. The house hums faintly around her. The refrigerator, the distant murmur of traffic, the creak of wood settling. Sounds she's heard 1,000 times but never really listened to. She thinks about the last 12 years. The tenderness, the routines. The mornings Callum poured her coffee and kissed her forehead. The evenings they sat side by side, reading or watching television. Close but not quite together. Was any of it real? Or was it all just two people pretending, hoping that if they pretended long enough, it would become true? And then quietly, another thought surfaces. Maybe love isn't something you feel from the beginning. Maybe it's something you build in the spaces between knowing and choosing. Maybe it's not the breathless rush people write about, but the slow, steady decision to stay even when it's hard, even when it's uncertain. Maybe that's enough, or maybe it's not. She doesn't know, but she knows this. She's not the only one who's wondered. She's not the only one who stood in a marriage built on hope instead of certainty, questioning whether the foundation was ever solid to begin with. If you've ever wondered whether love was real or just something you agreed to believe in, I'd like to know. Subscribe. Because some truths are quieter than we expect, and maybe we need to hear them together. She sits in the silence, her hands folded in her lap. The ache is still there, but it feels different now, less isolating, like something shared, even if she's alone. She doesn't know what she'll say when Callum comes home. She doesn't know if their marriage can survive this truth. She doesn't know if she wants it to, but she knows she can't pretend anymore. And then, faint at first, then louder, the sound of a car in the driveway. Lauren's breath catches. Her heart kicks hard against her ribs. The engine cuts off. A door opens, then closes. Footsteps on the walkway. He's home. The front door opens. Maren hears it from the living room. The soft click of the latch, the creak of hinges, the shuffle of footsteps in the entryway. Callum, home. She doesn't move. She sits on the couch, her hands folded in her lap, the letters spread across the coffee table in front of her. The wedding band sits beside them, small and gold, catching the faint glow from the lamp. Maren? His voice is quiet, familiar. The same voice that's called her name every evening for 12 years. She doesn't answer. He appears in the doorway, still wearing his jacket, his keys in his hand. He looks tired. The kind of tired that comes from a long drive, from thinking too much in silence. But when he sees her sitting there, he stops. His eyes move to the coffee table, to the letters, to the wedding band. And his face changes. Not dramatically, just a small shift. His shoulders falling, his jaw tightening, the keys slipping from his fingers and landing softly on the floor. He doesn't pick them up. He knows. For a long moment, neither of them speaks. Maren watches him, watches the way his chest rises and falls, the way his hand moves to his mouth and then drops again, the way he looks at the letters like they're something dangerous. Finally, she says it. Quiet. Almost a whisper. Why didn't you tell me? Callum exhales slowly. He doesn't move toward her, doesn't sit, just stands there in the doorway, his hands hanging at his sides. Because I thought, if I tried hard enough, it would become true. His voice is steady, but barely, like he's holding something fragile and trying not to drop it. Maren nods. She expected that answer, but hearing it out loud still hurts. Did it? She asks. He looks at her then, really looks at her, and she sees something in his eyes she's never seen before. Not fear, not guilt, but something raw, something unguarded. I don't know. The honesty of it lands like a blow. He moves slowly, crossing the room and sitting on the armchair across from her. Not close, not touching, just present. He picks up the first letter, the one he wrote to himself at 26. He doesn't read it, just holds it, his thumb brushing the worn edge. I thought if I chose the right life, I'd become the right person, he says quietly. I thought if I showed up every day, if I was kind and steady and reliable, eventually the rest would follow. The love, the certainty, all of it. Marin's throat tightens. She watches him, this man she's lived beside for 12 years, and realizes she's never heard him speak this honestly before. I love you, he continues, his voice low. I do, but I don't know if I chose you because I couldn't imagine life without you, or because I couldn't imagine life alone. The words sit heavy between them. Marin looks down at her hands, at the pale band of skin on her ring finger, lighter than the rest, the mark of something that used to be there. I think I did the same thing, she says. Callum's head lifts. He stares at her, and for a moment, neither of them breathes. You were kind, she says. You were steady. You made me feel safe. And I thought that was enough. I thought safety was the same as love. She pauses, her voice catching. But I don't know if I was in love with you either. Not the way I thought I was supposed to be. The admission hangs in the air, fragile and devastating. Callum sets the letter down on the coffee table. His hands are shaking slightly. So what does that mean? He asks. For us? Marin doesn't answer right away. She looks at the desk in the corner, at the space where the letters used to be hidden, at the wedding band on the table between them, neither of them reaching for it. I don't know, she says finally. They sit in the silence. The house is dark now, the only light coming from the single lamp beside the couch. Outside, the streetlights cast long shadows across Ashwood's empty streets. Callum leans forward, his elbows on his knees, his head in his hands. I wanted it to be real, he says, his voice muffled. I wanted to wake up one day and realize I wasn't pretending anymore, that it had become true without me noticing. Marin feels the ache in her chest spread, deep and cold. I wanted that too, she whispers. Callum lifts his head. He looks at her across the coffee table, across the letters, across 12 years of tenderness built on fear. Ellery, he says quietly. Marin's breath catches. The name in the letter. You read it. She nods. Ellery wasn't a person, he says. It was who I thought I had to stop being to be loved. The part of me that didn't fit. The part that asked too many questions. That wanted something I couldn't name. He pauses, his eyes wet now. I buried it. I thought if I buried it deep enough, I could be the person you needed. The person everyone needed. Marin's vision blurs. She blinks hard, willing herself not to cry. I did the same thing, she says. I don't even know what I buried, but I know I made myself smaller, quieter, easier. Callum reaches out then, slowly. His hand extends across the space between them, palm up, not demanding, just offering. Marin looks at his hand, at the calluses on his fingers, the familiar shape of his knuckles, the hand that's held hers 1,000 times. But she doesn't take it. Not yet. She just sits there, staring at the space between them, trying to decide if it's something that can be crossed. What do we do now? Callum asks, his voice barely audible. Marin shakes her head. I don't know. The words are honest, brutal, but they're all she has. They sit together in the darkness, neither moving, neither speaking. Just two people who built a life on hope and fear and tenderness, wondering if any of it was ever real, wondering if it's enough. The days that follow are strange, not loud, not dramatic, just different. Maren and Callum move through the house like two people learning a new language. Careful, deliberate, speaking in half sentences and long pauses, as if every word needs to be weighed before it's spoken. They don't sleep in the same bed. Not yet. Callum takes the guest room without asking, and Maren doesn't stop him. It's not anger, just space, the kind you need when everything familiar has been turned inside out. 3 days after the confrontation, Maren wakes to the smell of coffee. She comes downstairs and finds Callum in the kitchen, standing at the counter, pouring 2 mugs. The morning light filters through the window. Softer than before, pale and thin. Winter is coming. The air outside is cold now, sharp and clear. He slides a mug across the counter toward her. She takes it, wrapping her hands around the warm porcelain. Neither of them speaks. They stand on opposite sides of the kitchen, drinking in silence. Not hostile, not comfortable, just present. After a while, Callum says, "I'm sorry." Maren looks at him. His face is tired, lined with something that wasn't there before. Not age, just awareness. "I know," she says. They don't talk about the letters, not directly, but they orbit around them, the way you orbit around something broken on the floor, waiting to see if it's safe to step closer. One evening, Maren finds Callum at the desk. He's holding a pen, a blank sheet of paper in front of him. When he sees her, he doesn't hide it. "I'm writing to Ellery," he says quietly. She nods, sits in the armchair across the room, watching. He writes slowly, his hand moving across the page in careful strokes. When he finishes, he folds the letter once, sets it on the desk, and looks at it for a long time. "What does it say?" Maren asks. Callum exhales. That I'm not afraid anymore. That I'm done burying things. She doesn't ask to read it. She doesn't need to. The next morning they clean out the desk together. It's not planned. Maren just starts pulling out the old papers. Receipts, documents, things that don't matter anymore. And Callum joins her without a word. They work in silence, sorting through years of accumulated debris. At the bottom of the drawer, Maren finds the wooden box. She opens it. Inside a few old photos, a ticket stub from a concert, a small worn notebook. She looks at Callum. "What is this?" He glances at it, then away. "Things I kept from before." She doesn't press, just sets the box aside and they keep going. When the desk is empty, they stand back and look at it. Bare, open, nothing hidden. Callum runs his hand along the surface, brushing away the last of the dust. "It feels lighter," he says. Maren nods. "It does." That evening she sits at the desk for the first time. Callum is upstairs. The house is quiet. The lamp casts a soft glow across the surface, and Maren pulls out a blank sheet of paper. She doesn't know what she's going to write. She just knows she needs to. She picks up a pen, and the words come slowly. "I don't know if love is something you feel or something you choose. Maybe it's both. Maybe it's neither. But I know this. I want to try again. Not because I'm afraid of being alone, but because I choose to be here." She pauses, her hand hovering over the page. "I don't need perfection. I don't need certainty. I just need honesty. And I think that's enough." She sets the pen down and stares at the words. They feel true. Fragile, but true. She hears footsteps on the stairs. Callum appears in the doorway, hesitates. "Can I come in?" Maren nods. He crosses the room and sits beside her, his eyes moving to the paper. He reads silently, his expression unreadable. When he finishes, he doesn't speak. Just sits there, his shoulder close to hers, not quite touching, after a long moment, he says, "I want to try too." They sit together in the quiet. No promises, no declarations, Just two people who finally stopped pretending. Maren looks at the desk. This space that used to be his, now theirs. She thinks about the wedding band, still sitting somewhere in the bedroom, small and gold and waiting. She doesn't know if she'll put it back on. Not yet. But maybe soon. The next morning, the first snow falls. Maren stands at the window, watching the flakes drift down, soft and slow. The world outside is turning white. The streets of Ashwood, covered in a thin, fragile layer of new. Callum comes to stand beside her. They watch together, neither speaking. The cold is no longer threatening. It's just clear, honest, the kind of cold that makes everything sharper, more real. Winter, Callum says quietly. Maren nods. Yeah. That evening she picks up the wedding band. She holds it in her palm, feeling its weight. 12 years. 12 years of mornings and evenings and quiet routines. 12 years built on fear and hope and tenderness. She doesn't put it on, not yet. But she doesn't set it down either. She just holds it, turning it over in her fingers, and thinks about what it means to choose someone. Not because they're perfect, not because the love was certain from the start, but because you're willing to try, to stay, to build something real, even when the foundation is uncertain. She walks downstairs and finds Callum in the living room, reading. She sits beside him on the couch, not touching, just close. He looks at her, then at the ring in her hand. I'm not ready yet, she says quietly. He nods. I know, but I think I will be, soon. He reaches out, his hand open between them, and this time she takes it. Their fingers laced together, warm and familiar and new all at once. They sit in the quiet, two people learning what it means to choose each other. Not out of fear, but out of honesty. And for now, that's enough. Winter settles over Ashwood like a held breath. The snow doesn't stop after that first fall. It comes in waves, soft and steady, covering the streets and rooftops in white. The trees stand bare against the pale sky, their branches sharp and clear in the cold light. The house feels different now, quieter, but not empty, peaceful. Maren wakes one morning to find Callum already in the kitchen. He's making coffee, the way he always has, but this time he looks up when she enters. Morning, he says. Morning. They sit at the table together, not reading their phones, not scrolling through news, just drinking coffee, watching the winter light pour through the window. It's a small thing, but it's new. They begin building rituals, not grand gestures, just small moments of intentionality. They ask each other real questions now. Not how was your day, but what are you thinking about? Not are you okay, but what do you need? And they listen, really listen. Some mornings they sit in silence, and that silence doesn't feel heavy anymore. It feels like presence. One evening, a week after the snow started, Maren picks up the wedding band again. She's been carrying it in her pocket, feeling its weight throughout the day. A reminder, a question. She sits on the edge of the bed, turning it over in her fingers. The gold catches the light from the lamp, warm and familiar. Callum appears in the doorway. He doesn't ask, just waits. Maren looks at him. I think I'm ready. He nods, crosses the room, sits beside her. She holds out the ring, but it means something different now. I know, he says. She slides it onto her finger, slowly, deliberately. It fits the same as it always did, but it feels different, heavier, more real. It's not a promise that everything will be perfect, she says. I know. It's just a choice, to keep choosing. Callum reaches for her hand, their fingers laced together, the ring warm between them. That's enough, he says. The next evening they sit at the desk together. Maren suggested it without thinking. We should write something. For later. Callum looked at her, surprised, then nodded. Okay. Now they sit side by side, a blank sheet of paper in front of them, a pen between them. What do we write? Callum asks. Maren thinks for a moment. The truth, whatever it is. He picks up the pen, hesitates, then begins. We didn't start with certainty. Maren watches the words appear on the page. Her chest tightens, but not with pain. With something else. Something like hope. She takes the pen from him, adds the next line. But we chose each other anyway. They pass the pen back and forth, writing together. Their handwriting overlaps, intertwines, creates something that belongs to both of them. We don't know what the next 10 years will look like. We don't know if we'll always be sure, but we know this. We're here, not out of fear, not out of obligation, but because we choose to be. Maren pauses, the pen hovering over the page, then writes one more line. We're learning what it means to love honestly. And maybe that's enough. She sets the pen down. Callum reads what she wrote, his eyes moving slowly across the words. He doesn't speak, just reaches for her hand again. They sit together in the quiet, the letter between them. The desk no longer a place of secrets, but a place of shared truth. Outside, the snow continues to fall. Maren looks out the window, watching the flakes drift past the streetlights. The world is still, clear, the kind of cold that makes everything feel sharp and real. She thinks about the letters she found, the ones Callum wrote years ago, full of fear and hope and the parts of himself he thought he had to hide. She thinks about Ellery, not a person, but a ghost, the version of Callum he thought he had to bury to be loved. And she realizes Ellery isn't gone, just no longer hidden. Do you ever think about it? She asks quietly. About Ellery? Callum looks at her. Sometimes. Do you miss it? Hale considers this. I don't know if I miss it, but I'm not afraid of it anymore. Maren nods. She understands. She thinks about the parts of herself she buried too. The questions she stopped asking. The smallness she accepted. She's not sure who she would have been if she'd been braver. But she's starting to find out. They fold the letter carefully, tuck it into an envelope, right on the front, to be opened in 10 years. Callum places it in the desk drawer, not hidden, just kept. What if we don't make it? Maren asks. He looks at her. Then we'll still have tried. She exhales, nods. And what if we do? Callum smiles. Small, but real. Then we'll read this and remember what it took. That night, they sleep in the same bed for the first time since the letters. Not because everything is fixed, but because they're choosing to be close. Maren lies on her side, facing the window. Callum's arm rests across her waist, warm and steady. Outside, the snow falls soft and endless. She thinks about love. Real love. Not the kind in songs or movies. Not the breathless, certain kind. But the kind that stays. The kind that chooses. The kind that survives doubt and fear and the slow erosion of pretending. The kind that says, I don't know what tomorrow looks like, but I'll be here to find out. In the morning, they wake to the winter's first light. Clean, clear, cold but honest. They lie there for a moment, neither speaking, just breathing, just present. And then Callum says, Coffee? Maren smiles. Yeah. They get up, they make coffee. They sit at the kitchen table, watching the light stretch across the snow-covered streets of Ashwood. They don't talk about the letters. They don't talk about what comes next. They just sit together. Two people who finally stop pretending. Two people learning what it means to love, not because it's easy, but because it's true. The desk sits in the corner of the living room, open and bare. The letters from the past are tucked away, not forgotten, just no longer defining. And in the drawer a new letter waits, written together, a promise not of perfection, but of presence. A reminder that love is not something you fall into, it's something you choose. Every day. Even when you're not sure, even when the foundation is uncertain, especially then.